Good afternoon. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know, I'm Christopher Bork, I'm Dean of the Fox Valley AGO Chapter, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here to the Rockefeller Chapel, the enormously popular instrument and delightful treasure of the Chicago area. Thanks to David Lincoln for organizing all of this, and thanks also to our generous host, Tom, who will be talking to you more in just a little bit about the instrument. Later, when you do have the opportunity to open a console to play, feel free to just have fun. But be aware that there are other folks that want to play too. So I think we have a 5-minute limit, is that right, at the console? So don't get out all the finest works of Degree and play for a half hour when somebody else wants to play them instrument. So I'm not going to take a lot of time because there are people that know a lot more about this instrument and should talk to you. So here is Tom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome. I will be somewhat brief. I'll try to give you a good, quick view of the instrument. Some of you I know have been here before. Thanks to the generosity of the friends of our past president, Don Michael Randall, and the trustees of the university, this instrument was rebuilt and finished in May 2008. Prior to that, it lay fallow for about 7 years and had fallen into complete disrepair. The university has certain priorities with money, and the chapel organ was hardly near the top of the list. But Don Randall, who some of you might know, the editor of the Grove's Dictionary, was our president here from 2000 to 2006. And he made the rebuilding of the organ and the Caroline priority issues. And he promised before he left that it would be done. And so in December, I think 2005, at our autumn convocation, the president of the board of trustees got up and made the surprise announcement that the trustees were giving Don Randall a 65th birthday present of I think it was $1.5 million toward the $2.1 million that it takes to rebuild the organ in the Caroline. Was less than that. Anyway, big change. So, if that had not happened, this organ would not be here. The original organ was put in 1928 with the chapel. When the contract was signed in February 1927, it was $76,500. If you can imagine. Now, my friends over in the business school across the street say there's something like a 35 to 36, 37 to 1 ratio. So it comes out to 3 million or something, but you could never build an organ like this for 3 million, that's for sure. After the contract was signed, it suddenly was discovered there was lack of communication, as so often happens in universities and other places. It was decided that the choir needed an organ in the back to sing with. And that was not on the original specifications. We actually can't find the original specifications, they're completely gone. The university would not cough up any more money. So they were stuck with $76,500. So they somehow reduced the size of the chancel organ to put the small 2-manual and pedal instrument in the back. And we have, in this rebuild of 2008, tried to rectify that somewhat with some pretty clever guessing of what was left out of this organ. For instance, believe it or not, in the front organ there was no pedal 16-foot diapason. Skinner would have 3 and 4 of these things. The only pedal diapason was the one that you see in the 2 big towers. That's the great 16-foot open, and it's of a modest scale. So we have added to the organ a pedal unit of a good scale, metal, 16/8/4, and you can, when the sun is just right, you can see the big pipes through this arch that is around the corner here, and that arch, of course, is the greatest new addition to the organ. For years, the instrument was very buried in this chamber, speaking out 90 degrees in completely the wrong direction, and having to reflect to get down the building, even though it made pretty much of a racket. By the time it got mid-chapel, it was a very muffled sound. Everything everything was not focused. When Chance took the organ out in the summer of 2006, we suddenly discovered that wall, exactly in the shape of that arch, was only fill material. The big pylons for the massive carillon above, everybody always thought that entire wall supported the carillon. Exactly in that shape, it doesn't. It was only mortar and brick. So we found another $200,000 and some thousand, no small change. And they put that brand new arch in. The other thing that Chance did engineering-wise is the entire organ is redisposed in that chamber, actually in the gallery as well. Skinner originally pushed the entire organ to the back of that chamber, as far back as it would go. And there was pretty much of a space between the facade, which you see here, and then where the great organ or the choir or the swell began. There was about 13 feet. It was just lost. Shots now, everything has been very much moved forward. There also is a funny lip in the ceiling up there, and they somehow have engineered the swell box so the sound does not get caught in there. If you go online or you keep your old copies of TAO, I think it was October 2008, was that wonderful reprint of the construction of the organ and rebuilding, and they give blueprints and everything. It's really kind of fun. So the original organ, 108 ranks. Then in 1954, I believe it was, the entire back gallery was reconstructed and put on one level. And that's when Richard Vickstrom was director of music. Prior to that, it was on 3 or 4 big steps. So everything, they completely rebuilt it up there. And at that time, they did 2 things. They added 2 continual stops, built by Schlicker of Buffalo, who they've gone under quite some years ago, an 8-foot Gedeckt and a 4-foot roar flute, a little chippy, for continual use in the back, because it's almost impossible to schlep a continual organ up those stairs. By the time you got there, you'd either be dead or dropped. So there's permanently 2 stops up there, and in fact, now we have left them in the rebuild for exactly that same reason. The other thing that was done in the 50s is they replaced the original E.M. Skinner 2-manual and pedal console that was back there with a little Schlicker, one of those little contemporary things, that were just like boxes. And to conserve space, they chopped the right hand of it such that the keyboards ended in G a la tracker, and then took 5 notes off the pedal board, and the worst thing all, they recentered the pedal board. So when everyone up there played, you had no idea what you were doing in your feet. You spent all your time looking at your feet. It was just traumatic, I believe. Needless to say, in the 2008 rebuild, that's gone. There's a new 2-manual Shots console back there that controls the stops from the gallery and blindly controls the front organ through the combination action. We have solid state on the organ, so it's relatively easy, I should say, not very easy, to get this sort of switching. We've had early problems here and there, but that's the state of the new technology. Other things that we did to the organ and the rebuild, we did decide we wanted it to be the biggest in the city, so we had some things. I wish we had made it bigger. The great organ had some borrows from the swell, very peculiar, and I'm sure we're quite convinced those were some soft stops that were eliminated when they had to reduce the size of this. The gallery organ, obviously the trumpet has been added, and we named it the Randall State Trumpet in honor of Don Michael Randall. I was told I needed to get approval for anything named on the organ through a committee, and well, we don't go there. I just named the stop, and I think it occurs 4 or 5 times in the console. So, and the first time Don Randall came back from New York, he was just so excited. He said, "I heard my horn again." So, a wonderful fellow. The organ now is 132 ranks. We added, also in the gallery, a pedal unit 16A4 for some definition in the pedal. The swell, a 2-rank Cisco Alto, a 2-foot right stop, a 4-rank mixture on the grade. There was a gemsworn on the grate. We added a celeste to it. And I'll demonstrate a few of these colors. I don't want to just take too much time. And as you see, the console is movable. In the old days, it was landlocked behind the pews. And thanks to the emphasis nowadays on handicap concerns, the front of the chapel was reconstructed, and we actually have a parking place for the console out front. Because as you know, those things do take up a little room. I'm going to switch microphones here and talk about, show you some things from there. I think I have to leave that on. Ooh. Hello. So this new pedal that I've used in the pedal, here's 16/8/4, and here it's right in the arch. So that was a sound that was never there. Something else in the pedal that was remarkable is that the bottom 12 notes of the 32-foot bombard, which is a full length of wood, were of a different set of pipes. The shallots were actually teardropped with very small openings, and the bottom of the 32 bombard always got very woofy and kind of disappeared. Shants now, when the organ was in the factory, they cut out the opening of the shallot, just as the rest of the rampant, and made new big reeds for it, and it makes quite a racket all at the bottom. Like here's from E. They also put a funny stop, a 64-foot bravissima. What it does, it quints two of the 32s and kind of thunders around down there. It sounds a little too panic. Not too much interest. The trumpet, of course, is quite something. The harp and celeste, which are totally rebuilt. Here in the great organ, in the original design of the organ, the independent trumpets 16/8/4, they were enclosed in the choir box, which was way in the back corner with a bunch of pedal stops in front of them. And those choir reeds were just very distant. They were like in another planet. We found in the archival records in the basement, Skinner wrote a letter shortly after the organ was done and said his biggest regret about this organ was that he did not expose the great reeds. So we done it, and they're right there. So they're very present and a wonderful sound. In the 1970s, as many of you know, the organ was changed a bit. It was the era when everybody wanted everything to be Baroque, whether it was that or not. And a whole bunch of the orchestral sounds of the organ, the sets of pipes, were sold off. I think the whole thing was sold off for $1,000. That was orchestral oboe, bassoon, orchestral strings, a whole bunch of